Hey guys, Brett Weiss here. Welcome to another video. If you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. It is super helpful. If you like retro gaming, you definitely came to the right place. Today, we're blasting back to the golden age of gaming with a look at the top 10 first-party shooters on the Atari 2600, published by Atari itself. No Activision, no Imagic, or Imagic, as I prefer to say it, as I think it's really called. No Parker Brothers, just pure Atari goodness. So let's dive in, guys. All right, guys, it's a top 10 countdown. We're starting at number 10 with Solaris. This late in the life of the console release from 1986 crammed a galaxy's worth of action into the 2600 cart. I mean, this game is super impressive considering the era and the console. You'll explore sectors, you'll fight space battles, and rescue colonists, all with surprisingly sophisticated and slick pseudo 3D visuals. It's part strategy, part shooter, and 100% impressive. Guys, if you haven't played the late release Atari 2600 games, the ones that were released in the late 80s, after the crash and after the NES had really gained dominance, you've got to check some of these out. They look fantastic for the 2600, really impressive. Next up, guys, is Berzerk at number 9, the arcade classic. It's Berzerk. Navigate electrified mazes filled with hostile robots and dodge the dreaded Evil Otto, one of the coolest villains in all of gaming. He's an unstoppable bouncing menace. I love maze shooters. Maze shooters are awesome, like Wizard of War, and there's a ton of them I love. And this is one of the granddaddies of them all. It's based on the 1980 Stern arcade game. Now, it doesn't have voice effects. The Atari 5200 version does. It's actually a little better port, but we're talking the 2600 today. And it's a fantastic game. It's just a ton of fun. It's slowly paced, but in a good way. It spawned a great sequel, Frenzy, which was beautifully ported to the ColecoVision, but not the 2600 or the 5200. Just a side note for you ColecoVision fans. Like I said, it's slow, but I never get tired of Berzerk. It is an absolute classic for the console at number 9. All right, guys, coming in at number 8. Number 8 belongs to Phoenix, one of my favorite arcade shooters. This fixed screen shooter pits you against waves of angry bird aliens. No, not angry birds, but they're birds that seem to have some kind of vendetta, culminating in one of the earliest boss fights in gaming. Yes, there's a massive mothership in Phoenix that is sort of like the one in Demon Attack for the Intellivision, but Phoenix came first. So Demon Attack pretty much swiped at the Intellivision version. This game is simple to pick up, tough to master, and just plain fun. Actually, the arcade version is tough to master, but the Atari 2600, it's a little on the easy side. I wish it had more, or some difficulties levels. There are no difficulties levels. There's just one mode of play, and it's great. It's a fun shooter, but for someone like myself who played the heck out of the arcade version and this version, I do wish it had a tougher difficulty level, but it is still tons of fun. The arcade version came out by Taito in 1980, and I played the heck out of it beside my junior high school. Just a little ways up the road from my junior high school back in the early 80s, they had Phoenix, and it was an awesome game then and now. It holds up incredibly well. I would play it before school, after school, sometimes during. Truancy be damned. Anyway, I did love me some Phoenix, and I just love playing the original so much, and when they ported it to the 2600, I was very excited about that, even though it's easier. Yeah, solid number 8, Phoenix. Now, guys, the next game on my list, I'm sure a lot of you would have put this at the very top. It is the awesome Howard Scott Warshaw programmed Yars Revenge, a truly original title for the 2600. This is a surreal game with a lot of strategy. You're a mutated space bug taking on a powerful enemy protected by an energy shield. You use your Zorlon cannon to strike, but don't get hit yourself. It's trippy, it's unique, and it's one of Atari's most beloved original games. By original, I mean there's not an arcade equivalent. It's not a direct port of any arcade game. In fact, it's the best-selling original game for the Atari 2600. It's the genius work of Howard Scott Warshaw of E.T. the Extraterrestrial infamy. And Howard Scott Warshaw was originally tasked with the project of porting Star Castle to the 2600, that fantastic shooter that I played back in the day at Malibu Grand Prix. Very difficult game, and it was ported beautifully to the Vectrex. but the closest thing we have with the 2600 is Yars Revenge. And when you play it, you'll see the sort of vague similarities to Star Castle, but it is much different, and the visuals are mind-boggling for a 2600 game that came out, early in the in the early 80s. Just a fantastic game, awesome job, Howard Scott Warshaw. So yeah, I know a lot of you guys are gonna say, feel free to comment if you feel like the order is wrong here, or you have some Atari-published shooters that you prefer over these. Be sure and let me know. All right, guys, at 6, it's Stargate, also known as Defender 2. This upgrade over the original Defender adds warp gates, new enemies, and even more intense side-scrolling action. Now, the original Stargate in the arcades was awesome. Stargate for the Atari 2600 is a little easier, but it does include most of the enemies and features from Williams' 1981 coin-op classic, and is one of the most impressive arcade ports for the Atari 2600. It's definitely a better port than the original Defender for the Atari 2600. In that game, the ship blinked when you shot, and the mountains were replaced by buildings, and it was just easy. It was a little too easy. But Defender 2/Stargate, it's got that perfect line between challenging and not frustrating, and where you feel like you can get pretty good at it, which I never got great at Stargate in the arcades, but I love the Atari 2600 version. Not only is it a great port, but it's a little easier, which is a good thing in this case. All right, guys, coming in at number 5, halfway through the list, is the Cold War era classic Missile Command. Got my CIB copy here. You've got 3 bases, a finite supply of missiles, and a sky full of destruction. You defend your cities or watch them vanish. It is one of the most stressful and addictive shooters of its time. The cities are eventually going to vanish. You're not going to play this forever. It is challenging. The port is missing the bombers and the pair of anti-ballistic missiles positioned on either side of the screen. Yeah, there are fewer shooting implements, but it still works. It's still a great port of Atari's 1980 arcade classic. Interestingly, on a side note, the Atari 5200 version is also missing the pair of anti-ballistic missiles on the side of the screen. I thought that was really puzzling when that came out for the 5200 that they didn't, include those. But anyway, Missile Command works very well with the Atari 2600 trackball, but it is missing the end screen at the final. In the arcades, that awesome, massive "the end" showed up at the end of the game. It does not happen here, but hey, small gripe to an otherwise classic. Now, guys, for number 4, I looked everywhere for this game on my shelves and in tubs and everything, and I couldn't find it, but it is Vanguard, an awesome shooter. So I'm going to show you guys the Atari 5200 version. I love both. The 5200 version is a better port, but they are both awesome. Yeah, Vanguard on the 2600. Killer port of a scrolling shooter, which is really impressive. You blast your way through tunnels in a futuristic city with 4-way shooting, vertical and horizontal scrolling. No diagonal, mind you. They took that out for the 2600 version. There's multiple zones, there's tunnel walls and stalactites to avoid. There's energy pods you can grab for invincibility and more. The nicely varied graphics from SNK's 1981 arcade game have been replaced by configurations of colorful blocks, but it's still a terrific port and just a fun shooter that I play again and again and again. As a matter of fact, the first time I ever played Vanguard was on the Atari 2600, and then the 5200, and then much later, I don't know, 15 or 20 years ago, for the arcades. They didn't have this game in my arcades back in the day, so it was great to play it on home consoles. This is definitely one of the most dynamic shooters on the 2600. Vanguard coming in at number 4, really impressive. Taking the bronze at number 3 is the VCS Pack-In Original. Combat, as a lot of you know, the Atari 2600 was originally called the VCS, and then when the 5200 came out, they started calling it the 2600. Anyway, I digress once again. Combat is such an awesome game. There are 2-player tank battles, jet duels, ricochet shots. It's all there. Here in a cartridge that defined what multiplayer could be back in 1977. Yeah, couch co-op was huge on the Atari 2600, beginning with the launch lineup, including Combat, the game you got when you bought an Atari 2600 console. It was packed inside. When I was in junior high school, I would ride my bicycle to my friend Mike Mall's house, and we would play basketball and play Combat while listening to the sort of yacht rock band Air Supply, we would listen to the Greatest Hits album over and over. And yes, those do go strangely well together, at least for me, very nostalgic. And interestingly, my friend Mike Mall, he called me recently, and we both played basketball. He was a year younger than me, so he was on, like when I was in 9th grade, he played for the 8th grade team. And I told him, I said, dude, you've got to stop shooting like this. You're shooting like a platypus. For whatever reason, I said, man, you've got to stop the two-handed shots or you'll never make varsity when we get in high school. You need to, go up with one hand and, shoot a real shot like that or something like that. And he took that to heart, and he told me when he called me the other day, all these decades later, and said that really stuck, and he did change his shooting style, and he did make varsity. So anyway, but I digress. Combat is still an amazing game to play with your friends. It is a mono action, and there's not a more balanced or more fair game out there because it's just you against the other player, and it's never the game's fault when you lose. It is your fault or the fact that your player, your opponent is just better. It's just perfectly balanced shooting action. Just tanks or planes just coming out against each other and shooting each other. It's just fantastic. It is so simple yet so great. And as a matter of fact, back in the day, Combat, since it came with the console, it was a super common cartridge. And anytime you would go out looking, for vintage video games, even in the 90s when I was game chasing in the late 80s, you would see Combat cartridges everywhere. And it was so common, it just in collecting circles into the 90s when collecting really started taking off in early 2000s, people would consider Combat garbage because you just saw it everywhere. It was so common. But what got lost in the shuffle was just how an amazing game it is. And today, people realize that. They go back and play it and goes, wow, this is really fun. And a lot of people have super fond memories of this game because everybody that got an Atari, for the original release, had Combat. Runner-up on my list of 10 best shooters for the 2600 published by Atari is Asteroids, a port of the all-time arcade classic. Endlessly addictive, you fly through space, you break apart massive rocks, and fend off flying saucers. The 2600 version added game variations galore, 66 in all, including shields, modes of play with no flying saucers, faster and slower asteroids, and the instant ability to flip your ship 180 degrees. Now, the vector graphics were replaced by raster graphics. Players could belt out only 2 shots at a time, as opposed to 4, but it's still a great port of Atari's 1979 arcade classic. I was 11 years old when this game came out, or 12 years old when this game came out, and absolutely loved it. And I mastered it. Again, with Phoenix and Pac-Man, it was at the convenience store near my junior high school, and I played it all the time. And one evening, I just rode my bike to Quickway, from my house, because it was about, 6, 7 o'clock at night. I believe it was a Saturday night. And I played Asteroids for 4.5 hours on 1/4 because I'd gotten so good at it. I did that method where you fly straight up the screen and just leave one space rock and you take pot shots at the flying saucers that come out, and the little ones are worth 1,000, and you get, an extra ship for every 1,000 points or every 10,000 points. So I racked up ships across the screen, and I remember going to the bathroom and having a guy say, hey, play this game until I get back. Went and peed real quick, came back, and he had lost several ships, but hey, I got to keep it going. But I had to shut my game down because when the store closed that night, like 11 o'clock or whatever it was, I had to stop. The store was closing. But yeah, that's my marathon story with retro games, Asteroids. I loved it, and I was so glad when they came out with Asteroids Deluxe in the arcades because it was a harder version of Asteroids. Anyway, there I am digressing again. Now guys, if you've never played Asteroids for the Atari 2600, I feel sorry for you. But you really need to play it if you can with the Starplex controller. No, this isn't a commercial. I am not advertising it. This is just a really cool controller with 5 buttons, very arcade-like action when played with this spectacular controller. It's a ton of fun. I bought that at Classic Gaming Expo in Las Vegas many, many years ago. It still works great, and every time I play Asteroids on the 2600, I use that controller. All right, guys, we're down to it. And if you've watched my channel for a long time, you probably know what game this is at number 1. It is Space Invaders. The blue box version, that's the early release, and the later version was released in red. This is just a killer game. You notice a lot of older games, they didn't put screenshots on the back, but then they got smart and did later on. Space Invaders was the first officially licensed game for a home console. This was an enormously popular game in the arcades and for the 2600. Atari's version of Taito's 1978 arcade smash added 112 game variations. Yes, 112. It says it right on the box. It says there's 112 video games. Now that's a little hyperbole because variants on the game. But there are some really, really cool variants that make this version even better than the arcade classic. I prefer 2600 version of Space Invaders to the arcade version. I love the arcade classic, and I discovered it when it came out in '78. We were in a little town outside of Waco, Texas, called McGregor, and they had 3 Space Invaders machines sitting there, and I'm like, what in the world? And it just seemed like such an intimidating, scary, and daunting game. I mean, with that heartbeat sound effect and the invaders approaching and getting faster and more intense, it was the first time I truly felt kind of scared in a video game. And yeah, keep in mind I was 11 years old, but it was super exciting back in the day. But the variants on the 2600 version really upped the ante. It has zigzagging laser bombs, invisible invaders, moving shields, 2-player simultaneous action, and much more. Now, there are only 36 invaders per wave instead of 55, but it is still an amazing game and an absolutely must play and must own for the 2600. You will be going back to Space Invaders again and again, I guarantee it. Or at least I do. I love it. These are 10 games I love on the 2600, and that's our countdown. What do you think, guys? Your 10 shooters that were published by Atari for the 2600. What are your favorites? Or just let me know your favorite one. I'd love to hear from you. And let me know where I went wrong. I know a lot of you are going to think I got Yars Revenge a little too far down the list. And maybe you didn't think Solaris or Phoenix or maybe Vanguard belongs. Guys, drop your thoughts in the comment section. Smash that like button, however you're going to do it. And be sure to subscribe for more retro goodness. Until next time, keep shooting those 8-bit pixels.